I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Capella University is rethinking higher education. With its game-changing FlexPath learning format, you can earn your degree on your schedule and fit your education seamlessly into your life. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
It's a very difficult spiral that I enter when I start judging myself.
On the days you get out of it, how do you get yourself out of it? Or do you never get out? Have you never gotten out of it?
We're turning this into a pharmacology report.
It's okay. Many people listening to this need a pharmacology report.
Yeah.
And you must just bathe in it when you tell a joke and everyone's laughing.
Yes.
Oh my God, I can't believe my favorite comedian is standing right in front of me. You are my favorite comedian. Well, you and Louis C.K. are my favorite comedians.
Really?
So Gary Gulman, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on, James. I really appreciate it. I saw the list of people you've had on, and I'm just I'm honored.
No, but this is the interview I'm most intimidated by, so
oh, God.
Just bear with me.
All right.
So first off, let's just get this out of the way. You just had a special release on Netflix. It's About Time. I've watched it twice. It's incredible. Anybody should listen to it. I hope every single person listens to it. You have such a unique style of kind of creating, I don't even want to call them jokes. Is that a weird word, joke? I feel like joke is the same as shtick. You know?
No.
You tell stories that are unbelievably funny.
Oh, thank you. Shtick is that's a negative connotation.
I think of knock jokes when I think of the word joke.
But jokes, I like that. I don't mind that at all. I need new jokes. I'll say that frequently. I need new jokes, or I'm working on a new joke, or I'd hate to go to the next level where you're calling it a piece. I have this piece on, so that's obnoxious. So I prefer jokes to just about any other description.
Do any comedians say peace?
No.
Okay.
Not that hang around at my level, no.
So okay. That's an interesting phrase you just used. My level. What does that mean?
I think I'm on the outside looking in at some really great performers, and I have it's interesting. I wonder if it gets more difficult when you get acquaintances or friends who really make it big. Does it make you feel left out or something like that? And I'd say yes, it does.
But who's an acquaintance that made it really big?
Well, you may mention Louis C.K., who I've opened for in the past, and I just think of, all right, he's sort of the gold standard, and then everybody else is kind of watching him. I mean, not everybody, but there are a few people really at his level, and I consider myself way off that pace.
Why do again, I put
compare
you and
myself
Louis
too
C.K. in the
frequently.
same. I just
Wow.
put you in the category. Maybe I'll throw or start to throw Amy Schumer in there because she's like breaking out so huge and she's obviously very
So
talented.
talented, yeah.
And why do you feel like? I mean, you've done Netflix specials, you've done all sorts of specials. You've been on all sorts of shows. You do 400 sets a year. Why do you feel like just because he has this TV show and you don't? It doesn't sound like you've really aimed yourself in that direction. Why do you feel like you're on the outside looking in terms of the art of what you do?
Well, I guess I aimed myself at being an excellent stand-up, and then hoping that other things would fall into place. But really, I've just become an excellent. My goal was to become an excellent stand-up. I feel I'm in the ballpark of excellent stand-ups. But the other ancillary things that frequently come to excellent comedians didn't really pan out for me, and so I feel like I feel left out. I guess that's the best way to put it, but also the most immature way to put it.
Well, let's reel back, and you've done some excellent podcasts with other people, Brian Koppelman, Mark Maron, a bunch. You've been on a bunch of podcasts, so people could
Sure.
hear about your background in many places. But I do want to actually touch upon your background because it's interesting. So obviously you've been doing this for a long time. When did it start? You're from Boston, which is where Louis C.K. is from.
Yeah.
So maybe you knew each other back in the day there. But where did you start and why? Why'd you do comedy? By the way, you're 6'6".
Yeah.
You probably could have been a basketball player.
No,
but you
if
chose
I-
comedy instead.
If I could have been a basketball player, I would think I would have been a basketball player. But I started, my first open mic was October 8th, 1993. So I started at an open mic in Boston at a place called Nick's Comedy Stop, and I had to bring 3 friends, and then they put me on for 5 minutes, and it went well.
What was like one joke, one piece?
Back then I did impressions. So I did impression of Seinfeld and Kramer playing basketball, and that was like a big, I got a big response. So I was very, very encouraged by it. And then within a year, I decided that my impressions were not very good, and that I needed to speak in my own voice. And that's when I sort of got on the track I'm on now, which is straight stand up, observational type stand up.
And do you feel you were early in the observational thing, or was everybody started? Because around like the mid '90s, I feel there was this like almost, I don't want to say renaissance. It seems like the wrong word, but it seems like observational humor started getting really big, both in all the different comedy festivals I was going to, and everybody I was impressed with then.
Yeah, I mean that's what I grew up on really. When I was a kid, my mom would let me stay up to watch the Johnny Carson show, and my favorites were Gary Shandling and especially David Brenner. I really loved it, David Brenner, when he would come on the Tonight Show, or Merv Griffin, or the Mike Douglas show. So I got really into that type of observational humor. I found it easy to repeat to friends and family and get laughs off it, which was a big part of me starting off, just stealing these jokes from television programs that I saw as a little kid and doing them for my family and friends.
So this is almost like the first level of practice that you did. So it's
Yeah.
almost like take playing the piano as an example. It's not like people sit down at the piano and make up their own songs the first thing.
Right.
They play songs and learn
Yeah.
the craft of it. I hate to use that word. I know that's a funny word for you. I heard on Brian's podcast.
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
They learn the craft of
Yeah.
it from playing other people's songs until it's really great, and they get the feedback by seeing the response of people, like, oh, you play well. So is that how you first kind of started developing the skill?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that's where I at least built up a love for it and an understanding of how the jokes worked, and although it didn't make it any easier for me to write my own stuff when it came time to, when I was in my 20s, but I did probably pick up on some of the timing and delivery of a lot of those comedians.
So writing, timing, and delivery. I want to get back to those 3 things.
Yeah.
But so again, so you were obviously made your friends laugh. You go through high school. You go through college. What's happening? What turns you into a stand-up comedian? You did this open mic, but why did you decide this is going to be it for me? I love this more than anything else.
Yeah, I think probably if I hadn't if I had taken to public accounting and auditing and really found it easy and rewarding, then maybe I wouldn't have had the need to do stand-up comedy. But I really found that job to be boring and unfulfilling, and I couldn't really rationalize it in the world like I was doing something for that had sort of an ethical quality to it. So I found that stand-up comedy gave me a lot of rewards as far as making people feel a little bit better and forgetting about their problems for a short time. So,
But it's not just that, right? Like if they laugh at your joke, you feel a little better.
oh yeah,
So
totally.
there's an approval need as well there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Some kind of high that you were getting.
Yeah, it's an addiction. It definitely is. I mean, I don't need to do 400 shows a year to keep up my chops, but it feels like I need that shot of adrenaline every night. I mean, I have a major depression that sort of fluctuates during the day, and it gets a little bit better at night. And I think part of it is because I'm around people, and I also get this boost in serotonin and dopamine by doing shows for these people at night.
Hey, and you have a joke actually. I can't remember the exact specifics, but you talk about serotonin and dopamine.
Oh,
like
yeah.
you're an expert in these like neurochemicals.
Yeah, you can get little shots of serotonin and dopamine by having those small conversations with
Oh yeah,
neighbors
Trader Joe's.
yeah,
The Trader Joe's bit.
and Trader Joe's also. The people who interact with you at Trader Joe's are so friendly that you can get a quick fix of dopamine or serotonin by through the exchanges at Trader Joe's. Yeah.
And you must like just bathe in it when you tell a joke and everyone's laughing.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
okay. So back in the '90s, you start getting better and better. When do you realize, okay, I'm surpassing the people around me. I'm actually developing a really good skill at this.
I would say probably by the end of 1998, I figured out what I was doing as far as taking a step forward in that world, which at the time was the course was usually you would do stand up for 5 or 6 years, and then you would get management and agents and either audition for things, or a big thing back then was to get development deals to make sitcoms. So I got a few of those, and that changed my life. That was enabled me to move out of my mom's house and move to California and start doing comedy full time.
And what happened then? Like, what development deals did you get? What is a development deal?
A development deal, they give you money to not sign with another station, network or production house, and then you write a pilot, usually with another writer. They give you what's called a showrunner, who's an executive producer and has some experience running sitcoms and pilots. And so they put you with them, and I wrote a pilot with this man, and it didn't get picked up, which means it didn't get shot as a pilot.
What was it about?
It was about a guy who lived at home and was trying to start his life and lived in the same hometown that he grew up in and had the same friends, and it was biographical or autobiographical, and it was very. It was nice. It was nothing spectacular, and I remember the Fox network passed on it, and the next year I had a similar situation at CBS, and then I had one at Showtime, and later NBC. So I was popular in that circle as far as getting deals to develop sitcoms that didn't really pan out, which was very, very disappointing.
So by that point, you're somewhere between like 27, 30, 31.
Yeah.
What this is kind of like a normal period where people have their first what they would label as a failure. Like everybody, before that, you kind of like you blame failures on everyone else, or blame, oh, you're young and you need to learn. But at 30, you sort of start to feel like, oh my gosh, I need to already be at the next stage.
Sure.
So what were you, like, let's say CBS rejected you. This is the third one or the second one. Like what's going through your head?
Well, up until that time, everything I had really put my whole heart and energies into, I'd succeeded at, and from being a good student to being a good athlete, and then being a good stand-up, and they just said yes all along, and then this was my first big no. So it was jarring, and it was there was a lot of self-esteem on the line, and I had really believed in the projects and really believed that they would put me to that next level where I or I guess I would know what I was doing, and I was making a living and not worrying about whether I would make it, and felt that being on TV was making it. So I had to, and I was also living in Los Angeles, so I didn't have that outlet a lot where I could get on stage frequently and work out my jokes. So there was a lot of boredom and a lot of lonely nights, and there wasn't a lot to do in Los Angeles at that time unless you were working. But I stayed there from 2000 to 2006.
Wow, because 2006 is when you moved here, and I feel like that's like when your biography sort of starts on Wikipedia. Like suddenly you start doing like all these specials and this and that.
Yeah.
Like did things start to take off as stand-up here?
Yeah.
But was that painful to make the decision, okay, I'm going to give up on LA and go to New York?
It wasn't so much painful because I was doing it. I was just going to do it for 6 months, but I fell in love or became addicted to the stage time you can get in New York City. Whereas a good week out in LA, I could get on 4 or 5 times, and that was a really strong week for performance. And here, I can get on 10 times easily, and without really. Hustling that much.
So again, it's not that it's so great to make 10 groups of people feel good. It's like you needed that stimulation.
Yeah. And a lot of times it is just being out with people and interacting with people, even if it's on stage, but also off stage. I'm talking to the other comedians or the people who work at the club, so I'm getting a not the recommended daily allowance of social interaction, but some social interaction compared to what I'm used to at home all day, which is where I hide out and ruminate and beat myself up.
I was talking to a friend of mine about the martial arts teacher. I think his name's Frank Roberts, and he says everybody needs a plus minus equal, meaning you need in your case, you would need a comedian better than you that you could learn from, someone who's equal to you that you're both sort of challenging each other, and someone less than you that you can either teach or you could say, oh yeah, I'm clearly better than this guy. So do you feel like you that was kind of in New York with so many comedians around and kind of a whole culture here of stand-up comedy, do you feel you were able to find your subculture here where you could learn from?
Yeah, I definitely get inspired by a lot of the men and women who perform in New York, and most of whom I feel are in that plus category, and then I have a lot of equals who I can relate to and sort of commiserate with about the injustices that we face in the business, and although I've I've received pretty just treatment, there are still things that alienate me and make me feel left out of the.
Like what?
I don't know. There are just certain shows or movies that come on the air, and you see a lot of your friends be on it, and then you're like, well, I can't help but take it personally. I take it personally every time. Like the people must not like me or not think I'm talented. So I feel left out a lot, and it's a similar feeling to just being a kid and not being invited to the cool person's birthday or make the best team or things like that. It's just I haven't grown out of that.
But okay, so you've been doing this for 20 years. You've definitely tried the development deal world. Now you've been doing 400 sets a year, but you just had this Netflix special out, which must be some sort of validation. Like it's an incredible special, and now there's more outlets than ever with Netflix, Amazon, Comedy Central, HBO, all these places you could produce specials. Like, and you just had a special come out. Don't you feel that's some sort of like, oh yeah, I'm getting this recognition?
Well, a little bit. It's nice that the people really like the special, but I also feel like, well, they're going to come see me on the road, and I need to have material that's either as good or nearly as good. And also, I need to have different material because the new paradigm that guys like Louis C.K. has created is that you turn over your material more frequently. Now he does it every year. I can't imagine that I can do that, but I need to get close to that because I feel like I'm always nervous that I'll lose fans if they come out and see me and they're like, oh, he did the same jokes last time. So it's and I'm in a period of I wouldn't call it writer's block because I have been able to put out some things and I have been creating, but it's not flowing like it did for the material that I did on this special. This special came together within a year and a half, I would say, and it's taken me longer to build up replacements for the jokes in that special.
But let me ask you this, so I write a lot and I do a lot of articles and blog posts and books and so on, and I always feel that as soon as something's finished and people like it, it almost makes me feel bad because now I have to come up with something better or equal or something, or else that's it. You're only as good as your last thing. So have you been feeling this for 20 years, this exact thought?
Totally. Yeah.
So you recognize that this is something you always feel. So now do you use it to kind of motivate you, or do you use it to sort of justify depression?
It justifies depression and paralyzes me. And when I'm at my best, it motivates me. But when I'm in my current state, it makes me more resistant and just beat myself up more for not being more prolific.
So obviously people tell you everything I've just been saying, and yet and you go on and you get the approval of an audience. Why don't you think that's enough to say, okay, now I can sit down and focus. I'm going to, whatever it takes, I'm just going to focus on working on my next material. I feel really good about what's happened before. Why is it so difficult? Why does it kind of slip across that edge into depression? Do you think it's more chemical? Do you think it's more circumstance?
I think it's more chemical because I have actual symptoms of depression. Not really a down day, but my mind is working slower. I'm moving slower. I almost feel like I'm moving in slow motion. I'm not able to get enough sleep. There doesn't seem to be an amount of sleep that satisfies me, and so I think it's more it's an actual depression that I think arose from finishing my last special, which I actually the special that just aired was recorded last year in 2015. So it took a while for it to come out, and I as much as people tell me they really like it, I could pick it apart all day long and find the flaws in it. So it doesn't. I'm just there's part of me that's just waiting for somebody to say the exact thing that I fear is the case with the special. So every once in a while I'll get a negative comment and I'll be like, see, they don't like it. It's not that good.
There is a ratio, I think it's the 10-to-1 ratio, where for every one negative comment you get, you have to get at least 10 positive comments to make you feel as good. And it's an evolutionary thing, because if there's an apple tree and a lion, the lion is 1,000 times as bad as the apple tree is good.
Right.
So you were conditioned to respond to negativity much more emotionally.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting that it's instinctual. That's interesting.
So what's when you look at the last special, and I loved it so much, but what's, and obviously many listeners haven't listened to it yet, but what's a bit you could criticize that I would understand because I've seen it?
Well, see, I think that the audience and I are not on the same page. I wonder whether they didn't react as big because I wasn't committing, or they just didn't react as big because they maybe the ceilings were too high, so I couldn't tell how they were reacting. So I know that I've had better sets and I've recorded better sets, and I just feel like the audience wasn't 100% with me. Were they 0% with me? No. Were they over 80% with me? Probably. But I was looking for the perfect set because I was recording it and I had waited so long to record it for a special, so that when it wasn't perfect, I was was devastated, which is it's not proportional to what happened. I wasn't
because people
booed
are
off-
laughing throughout.
Yeah, I wasn't booed off the stage, and I didn't have any kind of breakdown. But I watched it. And I'm like, oh, I wish that joke had gotten a better reaction. I wish the audience had been more on board for that one. And so and then there's a joke that I wound up leaving out, which was about role playing with my girlfriend. And I
Oh my God, you did that on, I think, Conan.
Conan, yeah.
Yeah, and that was I've played that for 1,000 people. Like, that is
Oh,
the
wow.
funniest
Thank
bit
you.
ever. Why did you leave that bit out? It's hilarious.
It was
Just you gotta just do it right now. You don't do the whole bit, but like just whatever you want to do with that right now.
well, I just talk about it actually stems from just being the worst role player, but I really consider myself this great role player in that I commit to the situation. So my girlfriend I'm a professor at a prestigious New England university, and my girlfriend is a senior in my Intro to Western Civ. And then people laugh at that, and I say, well, I don't know why she was a senior in the intro either. She gave me some BS about transferring in from Syracuse or some safety school. But anyhow, it goes on for about 7 minutes, and the main thing is that I'm so into the role I'm playing as professor that I really forget about the sex and become more concerned that she'd become a better student and apply herself and stop wasting her parents' money.
It was great, and I love also how you almost, and I don't know how I want to discuss how you kind of build into a bit like that, but you start off with like a mini bit with, first you say you role play, she's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development,
yeah.
and you're the Deputy Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, but you feel like she's not pushing her agenda enough.
Right.
So that kind of gets this intro laugh, like you kind of soften up the audience to the idea, and then you go into the kind of professor-student thing, and it goes so far beyond the typical kind of professor-student cliche of role play. Like you commit so much to it, it's ridiculous. And you tell this whole story, and then there's tangents, like the whole thing about the school doesn't like Jews, so you can't get tenure. So, so it's this whole thing. It's crazy. And how do you take a bit like that? Like, how do you sit down and start crafting that? Like, what was the initial thought? Like, oh, this might be funny. And then how do you keep pushing it? Like, why do you know to keep pushing it, and where?
I guess the feedback from the audience you get. There's a certain instinctual thing that I get where I'm like, well, there's room to put more of a joke in there. There's room for more lines, and then it just becomes what the audience will allow, how far you can go, and the main.
But sometimes going far is in itself funny. Like the audience thinks you're finished, and you just keep going, and that by itself is funny.
Yeah, they will laugh at that sometimes going far off the beaten path. But I guess the theme of that joke became be as specific as possible as far as what you could want as a professor, and then on the other side what she wants as a person trying to be a lover, and just the difference between my expectations and her expectations, I guess, is where the joke. How much of that I was thinking when I wrote it, probably none, but I felt it, that there was an instinct there that the more specific and the more I expected of her as a student, then the funnier it would get, because of the it's just absurd that I would go this far in she's willing to do anything to pass, and she thinks she's just going to have sex with me, but I keep insisting she do extra credit, and I try to work with her by saying how well she participates in class and things like that.
And it's the specificity that I think is almost like a hallmark of a lot of your jokes. Like you start off going down one direction, and then any time another topic almost comes up, you go really far down that tangent, and then you pull back masterfully, and you sort of pause, and then like you're like right back into the thing you were doing before. Like when you were doing the Trader Joe's bit there on the last special, there's so many tangents you go into. This is like a 14-15 minute joke, and you go down into the whole Golden Girls thing, and Phyllis, and a Department of Commerce banned that name in 1933, and it's going on, and then the woman who rams into you and her whole thing. But you describe it with such seriousness. It's like not like you're telling a joke. It's like it's almost like you're dumbing yourself down a little bit, telling this incredibly serious story about something not so serious, and that's part of the humor. And again, I'm trying to figure out like what's your thought process as you're constructing these elaborate jokes. Maybe I'm dissecting it too much, even.
No, I mean, I know that one thing I was inspired by over the past several years was a documentary that they did about Bruce Springsteen writing and recording Born to Run, and I just remember him going over every single note from every instrument in making that album and the record Born to Run, and I was just like, well, all I have are these jokes, which is a bunch of sentences. I don't have to figure out where the saxophone comes in or where the rhythm guitar should come in, so I can really go over every word in this joke to see whether there's a jumping off point. Where I can digress a little bit, and to me those are like I was always a big fan of Rube Goldberg machines, like Mousetrap, and I just feel like if the mouse is a laugh, and all these different areas I go to along the way to get that laugh are interesting and unusual, like they are in that game Mousetrap, or in a good Rube Goldberg drawing or cartoon, then the audience will stay on for the ride, even though I could have gotten to the catching the mouse much quicker with a one or two liner, and so that's I think maybe that's the best way to describe it, is that the digressions and everything become sort of a delivery system for the laugh. Try to get the laugh, but in a way that hasn't been done before. It's so hard to be original at this point. I don't consider myself especially original in content, but I feel like maybe I arrange the wording and the laughs in a unique manner.
Let's stop to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players, and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get two memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.
What is originality in content? Like, take Louis C.K, for instance, okay? People have been complaining about their kids and babies forever.
Yeah.
Take any ethnic background. Everybody complains about their ethnic background. You don't do it so much. You're Jewish, and you definitely have, like, a set of Jewish jokes, but, like, you know, it's not a big part of your act, I feel. And again, so like with this role play joke, and again, I people could Google or YouTube your clip from Conan where it's just like perfect. And you start off again. You could have ended with or you could have pushed the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development thing, but you switched right into another thing, which was the student teacher thing, and then that kept going into tenure and, like you say, extra credit and why is she a senior but in your intro to Western Civ class? Like, just all these ridiculous things. And it's interesting. I didn't think of it that way. It's sort of like you took each word and almost looked at it how Bruce Springsteen's looking at these notes and figuring out what else to do with it. And it's an interesting way to do it. It's almost, I'll say another example. It reminds me of, did you ever read The Godfather by Mario Puzo?
Oh, yeah. I loved it.
He does that in the book, and they don't do it in the movie, but, like, he'll go off for, like, 90 pages on that woman's, like, vaginal tightening
Yes,
surgery.
yes.
So, and that's never in the movie, obviously.
It's in the movie, sort of referred to in the fact that she's very attractive to Sonny, who it's clear in the movie has a big member because his wife gives the indication with her hands how big it is. So that's the only sort of evidence that this woman is different, but yeah, that's a long and drawn out digression in the Godfather, and it really makes it.
like a 90-page digression.
Yeah,
And he
yeah.
never did that in his prior two books, which weren't successes. Like that
Oh,
was his
that's
first book, was a
interesting.
success, and he went on all these digressions.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, the digression thing. I never, because again, most comedians, they kind of tell their story, they tell their joke, and then they go on to the next. And you give yourself, I think, a lot of power by pushing and pushing on the one idea. And again, that structure in and of itself is funny. And it requires timing. So let's go into the timing thing, because you'll go down this whole way, which will lead to, you're angry, you're telling a joke, there's laughter coming, and then there's almost like a pause. You have like your finger up, and then you're back to the original joke. So
Right.
like, what is timing? What's the difference between a good comedian with timing and a not so good comedian with timing? Maybe that's a broad question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that I do use timing. I think it's more, and I don't think it's instinctual. I think it's something that I've improved with over the years, and just being in front of, getting all the repetitions and being in front of hundreds of audiences a year. But I'll still make some mistake with timing. But it's just timing is a matter of when you say the punchline, or when you take a step off the main story and digress, and so there are a lot of timing issues, but I don't feel like that's something that I concentrate on or have to make conscious.
You feel like it's like real subtle changes as you see audience after audience react to you, then you kind of almost make these.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I watched. This is almost like a before and after. I watched Anthony Jeselnik do some stand up when he was still a writer for I forgot what show, maybe Fallon.
I think Fallon, yeah.
Yeah, so he was doing some stand-up then, and now he does his own specials.
Yeah.
And you see the one main difference is timing. Like he's much quieter between, he'll pause a lot more, almost uncomfortably. And you have your own uncomfortable pauses almost. And it seems like that's a big key in this, is being confident enough in your material to pause.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true, and I think that the pauses come under the banner of timing. But and it does require confidence, because you're afraid you'll lose the audience. But in some cases, it's just a matter of giving them a second to catch up, or just make the inject some not drama, but they're waiting to some tension, to build up some tension with the jokes.
And then the other thing I think that's kind of part of your style, and correct me if I'm wrong, is what I was slightly mentioning before. You almost slightly dumb yourself down to create this artificial importance about like a trivial story, like let's say a woman cutting in line at Trader Joe's, but then the joke itself is funny because you're talking about this, story, and you're using like intense vocabulary. And, I forgot which joke. Maybe it was the same one. You start talking about the difference between temerity and some other word. And, you're like
audacity versus temerity.
Yeah, like you're really kind of intellectualizing like this simple confrontation, and that's you did that in the role play joke as well, and you do that in a lot of the jokes. How did that consciously come into play in your writing style, or has that always been there? Or
no, I think it's something that I probably was aware of as a funny thing, just to talk about small things with a more intense vocabulary. So, but that was something that I sort of locked onto early in my career. I think if you saw early versions of my comedy, you would say, oh, he sort of does the same thing, but for a shorter amount of time back then, and it's the the getting cut in line at Trader Joe's though, that's it's not 100% true, but there was that. I was enraged by the injustice of it all. And
Did she really say you'll get over it?
Yeah. I really yelled, "This isn't fair," and she really turned around to me and said, "You'll get over it." And I
That's
was
painful.
It was really, really painful.
Imagine if a girlfriend said that to you.
I know.
What would you do?
I know. I would be devastated. I would be outraged, which I was. I was outraged, and she wasn't even a girlfriend. She was just a mean woman at the Trader Joe's.
And I think it would destroy me actually if someone said that in a Trader Joe's to me. Like I would feel, but you kept pushing. Like did you really try to get back in front of her?
I did try to outmaneuver her, and there's a point where it probably wasn't more than 30 seconds where she got called to the next cashier, and I got called to the next cashier. So it really didn't make a big timing. It just was the injustice of it all, that she could leave her cart in front of me and go get more things, and then
from the frozen food section downstairs.
Yeah, she went downstairs to frozen foods. Yeah.
And so, okay, you went home then after that, and did you say to yourself, "Oh my God, I have to write this down"?
Yeah.
So right then, that day.
Yeah, I knew that something had happened to me that was unusual and lent itself to a joke. Now, I wrote the first couple of lines and I tried it out at a bar, and there was no sign that there was going to be any laughter there. But then I told the story to some friends, and they laughed, and so I said, so I should continue. I actually had to ask them outright. So I should continue trying to make this joke work. This is worth working on. They were like, "Oh yes," and I feel like other comedians wouldn't have needed that extra feedback. Other comedians would have said, "Hey, I believe in this. I'm gonna keep working on it." So,
but feedback's strong though. Feedback, tells you where to. Chris Rock does it, right? He goes to the Laugh Factory in New Brunswick, and he just reads stuff off a napkin just to see. It almost like he makes his jokes bad, and then if someone laughs, he knows he's got something to work on there.
Yeah. I think that's really helpful, and I think that's also a position I would love to be in. And I'm that way in Boston. I can go into any of the clubs and work on new stuff, but in New York there are very few places where I can just walk on and go up. And I always dreamed that was the place that you got to where you were just unstoppable at that point, because I feel like the only thing holding a comedian back is how often he gets to try out his material, and if you take that variable away and it becomes unlimited, you can really make great strides.
But Gary, this is what I don't understand. You're on 400 to 500 times a year. How much more do you want to go on? Like you already have it. You already got there.
But I feel
of course, nobody ever feels they got there. But you, as objectively, I can say. You're there.
Yeah, I just when you talk about Chris Rock going in with a list, I can't just go in with a list and have people pay attention. I have to bring the goods, at least for the most part, so that I can work in. What I do is sort of work in the new things in between things that I'm fairly certain will work, because I'm still largely unknown. I can walk around the city and not get recognized all day, whereas Chris Rock would be mobbed on every corner. So there is, I'm not saying I need Chris Rock's fame to be satisfied, but the fact that he can go in and try out his new things at any club any day of the week is a great advantage that he has over somebody at my level.
Do you think there is a level in any area, but let's talk comedy, do you think there is a level where you hit that level and then finally you can say, okay, I'm happy, I'm happy I'm at this level?
Yeah, because I think I've gotten to it at certain points. Like I felt when I was getting those development deals, I was like, all right, this is where I should be at best in my career, is where these other comedians of my age and ability are getting development deals, and I'm with them getting the development deals, and now I feel like I'm in a bigger group of people who've sort of been through that and not gone on to traditional fame and fortune.
But let's take a look at someone like Jim Gaffigan's career. Obviously, great stand-up.
Amazing.
Great stand-up for many years. He also wrote a couple of books that were very funny, which is basically his stand-up act. But it's only in the past year or so he's got the Jim Gaffigan show.
Right.
And how old is he? He's like the same same age as us or maybe a little
Yeah.
older. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, probably the
And
same age as me. Yeah.
yeah, so it happens over time.
Yeah.
Like it could happen next year. You don't know.
Yeah.
You just keep
Yeah.
going at it.
It's possible. I just don't.
And he's on some weird channel too. It's not even like a traditional comedy
Right,
channel.
true.
It's like Nickelodeon or something.
Yeah. It's true, and he's someone I admire very much. But I just feel like there's so many hoops to jump through in between where I am and where he is, that I just feel it's overwhelming and daunting, and I hope I won't need it to be satisfied or feel like I've made it.
Well, so when
Because
did
it's a long shot.
why do you think it's a long shot though? And again, I say this, you just had a special released. I'm sure it's doing well. It's written about, like it's great. You're on any talk show you ever want to go on to. It seems to me like you Google you and you're on every single talk show. What does it take to go from here to there?
I guess there was a time where I got a lot of more yeses, and I get a lot of no's now. Like I wanted to go on a few of the TV shows to promote the special, and they were very polite and said that oh, we love Gary. That's the thing that you get sick of in this business. If you love him, then the least you could do is put him on your show. So I'll wind up going on. Probably Conan to promote the special, but it would have been nice if every single show was like, "Hey, will you promote your special on our show?" That would be nice, and I feel like not out of the realm of my talent.
Well, I feel like with many areas now, because of the internet, like let's say you write books. You can't just write a book anymore. You now have to go on like a speaking tour,
right.
And you have to write blog posts and articles for all the different websites. Do you feel like you need to do extra stuff outside of stand-up? Like you focus so much on stand-up. Do you feel like now you need to do a book or I don't know what else, try out for roles on, I'm just making it up, like roles on sitcoms or whatever.
No, I think all those things are really, really helpful and part of the whole package. And I guess there's sour grapes in that. I think, I just wanted to be a stand-up, and they're making me do all these things that aren't stand-up. They're not making me do anything. All those things are very fun, but they require auditioning and preparation and or just in the idea of a book, just sitting down and spending a lot of time with my thoughts, which is very, very difficult for me because I have these ruminating negative thoughts where I don't they really overwhelm me with depression many times. So
like what? Like what will be a thought today, or yesterday, that just sort of brings you down and doesn't let you work or focus?
I have, when I write things down or write a joke, I'll just think, well, this has been done before. This is very similar to what somebody else talks about, and I don't know if the audience is going to like this, and if they do, I really need to step up my game because it's not as good as the stuff that was on the special, and then I get into and you didn't even think the special was so good, and it's just it's a very difficult spiral that I enter when I start
And then how do you
start judging myself.
On the days you get out of it, how do you get yourself out of it? Or do you never have you never gotten out of it?
I don't know that I've ever gotten out of it fully. I just it gets to be a point during the day where I just naturally start to feel a little bit better after being. There's a rhythm to my depression, so that it's very bad in the morning when I get up and it's hard to function, and then as it gets further away from sleep, the depression lightens a little bit, so that I can do my shows at night and I can interact with other people, and then it resets first thing in the morning. It's like a Groundhog Day,
which is almost the opposite of what it should be. Like you would think sleep would rejuvenate you.
Yeah.
And at night, you sort of lose, you know, there's kind of what's called willpower depletion. And, you know, you have all sorts of depletion in your mind until you sleep again.
Yeah.
So, like, what does a doctor say? Like, why does it start for you in the morning?
It's just the nature of this particular type of depression I have, which is treatment resistant. So that I take a lot of medication and go to a lot of talk therapy, but it's this particular episode has lasted well over a year now, and has required just pulling out all the stops as far as I've tried just about every medication and treatment there is out there, and I may wind up trying something that works for treatment resistant, which are I think MAOI I think is the name of it. They're sort of an older class of antidepressant. We're turning this into a pharmacology report.
That's okay.
Sort of an older class of
Many people listening to this need a pharmacology report.
Yeah. So that particular class of antidepressant seems to be more helpful in treating anti-resistant depression, and I think it was something that I first heard about when I first started being treated. But it requires a certain diet and to be off all the other antidepressants for 5 weeks. So it's a challenge to really switch over to that class.
This is totally like an aside, like completely tangential, but what I always wonder is there's all these antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills, and you know the average it takes for any patient to find what works for them is 8 years apparently. So because there's so many different types of chemicals in the brain and how you can manipulate them. Is it dopamine? Is it serotonin? Is it something else? But why don't they? And I know this is controversial now because of Prince's death from Percocet overuse, supposedly.
Right.
But why don't they prescribe more kind of controlled happy pills as opposed to antidepressants?
No, I know. I read...
Like Percocets are actually make you happy.
Right.
I'm not recommending them, but it does happen that way.
Yeah, and you know, in the past several months, I've smoked pot a few times, and that has made me less anxious and more happy. In some cases, euphoric. So I guess I self-medicate to a certain extent, but the downside of the Percocet is the addiction. I try to stay away from things that are addictive.
But all the antidepressants are addictive. That's why you can't get off them for 5 weeks because it's a challenge.
Yeah. Right. I hadn't really thought about that.
What's not addictive? The pharmaceutical industry, like 75% of drug deaths this year are going to come from the actual approved pharmaceutical industry as opposed to like crack or heroin or the traditional bad drugs.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It used to be 25%, like let's say 15 years ago.
Wow.
But like people got more sophisticated about it, and doctors got more willing, you know, if you find the right doctor, they'll prescribe.
Yeah.
So, but do you think depression might be linked to comedy? Like you get, let's say, annoyed at something, and maybe even depressed about something, so that becomes the seeds of like, well, why am I annoyed about this? Why am I depressed about this? What's funny in this? What's ludicrous in this that I was depressed about? Let's say this example, the woman in the Trader Joe's.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain side of that though that cures depression, in that this exchange I had with the woman at Trader Joe's really enraged me and depressed me. But then there's this vengeance you get from actually making other people laugh about it and proving that she was wrong, and all these people are on my side and they're laughing and applauding at the audacity this woman had to leave her cart unwatched at the checkout stand while she continued to shop. So there's some redemption there from writing a joke about it. So,
but even seeing the humor in it kind of comes from depression. Like most people will be like, oh, okay, whatever, and you're like, no, I have to get justice. You say that I'm about justice. Like you kind of bring down this kind of lofty concept of justice to this line. And that's both depressive and funny.
Right. Yeah. I guess if I didn't have a depressive view of the world, I wouldn't have the premises to go off. But at the same time, if I didn't have the depressive nature, I would have more confidence and more energy to write more things and maybe expand my activities into more acting or podcasting or something like that, or writing a book.
Yeah, well, okay, let me give you an idea on writing a book.
Okay.
Because I feel this is what Jerry Seinfeld did, and I feel this is even what Jim Gaffigan did. Take your last 2 or 3 specials, print them up, staple them together, and submit it to an agent as a book. Just that's a first draft, and see how the agent responds.
Yeah, that's interesting, but I that's the thing that really irritated me about Seinfeld's book Sign Language. I was like, he pretty much did that.
Yes, he totally did that.
Yeah, and I
By the way,
thought
Jim Gaffigan did that too.
I didn't notice that. I haven't read much of Jim Gaffigan's books, but I read Sign Language, and I was like, well, that doesn't seem fair. I already saw this on TV or on the Seinfeld show.
Right, but you're a professional comedian. All the readers were from Des Moines, so nothing wrong with Des Moines. They they bought the book, sold millions of copies of the book.
Yeah. I mean, I could try that, and I'm not above trying that. So perhaps I will collect that and send it along.
That's a technique that works in every field, by the way. Like I know people in every field who have done that.
Wow.
Like their articles, they'll just print them up. Their blog posts, their stand-up routine. Just as a first draft, not like you're not even committing to doing it. You just want to see what the agent says or what the publisher says, and see what happens.
Yeah, I did submit one time, not a draft, but maybe an outline for a book about all my thoughts on school from kindergarten through 12th grade. I had notes and stories and jokes about that. So that was as close as I really got to throwing my hat in the ring as an author.
Did you ever perform them though? Those jokes?
Some of them wound up in my act, but the vast majority of them were just memories.
See, and again, I'm gonna push for the stapling technique because those things actually, because you've done them hundreds of times, those things actually make people laugh.
Yeah.
So a book of them, you won't have all the timing and everything. Seinfeld's a master of timing as well. He didn't have all the timing in his book, but it's still funny on paper.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah.
So what's next? What are you working on now?
I'm working on my next special, and I'm hoping to do a one-man show. Jason Alexander, speaking of Seinfeld, Jason Alexander wants to direct a one-man show idea I have about. It's called Hebrew School Dropout, and it just talks about my relationship with God over the years and my religion and my knowledge of the Old Testament and things like that. So, but
oh my God! And by the way, 2 things. One is what you said before about your career, and by the way, Jason Alexander wants to direct a one-man show based on my material. Okay, we'll leave that aside for a second. But your bits about the Bible in your last special and other places, like Fraser Crane is almost like or Jesus is almost like the Fraser Crane of the Bible, because it's like this great sequel in the entertainment business.
Oh yeah.
Like this stuff is really insightful and and funny.
Oh, thank you.
You totally should do something on religion, but it's great stuff.
Thank you.
So he's going to direct that show. He's one of the most famous comedians in history.
Right. But first I have to write it, which is overwhelming.
And so do you will you go home today and think about it, or sometimes it's hard to switch from I have to come up with new material for a stand-up tonight to now I got to do this longer term thing, because you're the type you need that instant stimulation of tonight. Yeah. So a one-man show with Jason Alexander almost seems too far away.
Yeah, it's hard, but I'm making baby steps towards having something for him, and I'll send back and forth some writing and things, but it's still finding out what is it really about and what I want to say through it.
And how does this is a little tangential also, but your kind of success that's still blooming as a stand-up comedian and other things, and mixed with this depression, you're obviously in relationships and stuff. Like, how does the person you're with kind of deal with the back and forth?
She's incredibly supportive. I mean, I ask her frequently how she can tolerate my moods, because a lot of time I'm just not there, and so so I've never been more convinced that somebody loves me just because what she's had to endure over the past year. But at the same time, I sometimes think I'm doing her a disservice by holding on to her. That
You can't think that way.
no, I know, I know.
That's hard because maybe she also likes, being a caretaker in some sense. Not that you need caretaking,
Right.
But that could be something that actually is.
Yeah, but there is a caretaking aspect to it. Yeah.
So okay, so Jason Alexander, potential one-man show, potential book. What
Yeah.
else?
I don't know. I'll probably keep auditioning for some TV and movie things, and hopefully just I'm gonna do another Conan appearance this summer. So that's what I'll be working on, and then just trying to get better as a stand-up and write newer stuff.
And how do you now get better as a stand-up? Like, where do you feel? And again, I'm always interested in kind of like peak performance at like this mastership level. Like, how do you keep fine-tuning your skills to become more of a master at what you do?
Well, I was thinking recently that maybe the one-man show was the next thing, because a one-man show is almost like you're taking a small part of what you would do in an act in a comedy and really expanding it, which is what I try to do with my jokes in general. But instead of doing 15 minutes on Trader Joe's, I would do an hour on. It wouldn't be on Trader Joe's. It'll be on the Old Testament and my experience with being a Jew in America at the time I am. So that's maybe the next step is to take the microscope and expand the scope of it and maybe do more and more of that.
I like how you say it's a microscope, because it's like what you were saying earlier. You kind of have the joke, but then you hone in on each word and see where you could digress. So like, again, and we keep talking about the Trader Joe's bits and nobody knows what we're talking about unless they watch the
Right.
Netflix special. But right in the beginning, you say like, Trader Joe's is like Narnia, and then you go into which particular Narnia, then you go into, by the way, a biblical bit about Narnia and you being a child, and then finally you're back. But then I was on the line at, it's coming all the way back,
Right.
and you don't really see that in a lot of comedians. I feel like, and to some extent, some of your style is similar to Seinfeld's in that you'll play with language a lot.
Yeah.
You'll play, like you'll do that thing where you'll have many different words to describe something. Just he used to do that as well.
Sure.
And that in itself is also funny. Kind of all the ways, the 100 different ways, Jewish people describe loser.
Oh, right.
It was very funny how you did
thank
that.
you.
And but he'll do something where he's playing with words like that, and I feel that's very Seinfeldian. But you take it to a new level because it's almost athletic the way you take it, because you're saying so many words.
Oh, thanks.
That's funny. But yeah. So look, Gary, thanks so much for
thanks for
coming
having
on
me.
my
This
show.
was an honor. You're a great interview. I really like listening to you, even when I'm not the subject. Yeah.
Well, I like all of your stuff. I've watched. I've sent out links to your YouTube videos and your
that's
specials
really generous
so
of
many
you. Thank
times.
you.
And
Thank you.
who are your comedians that you admire? So you've mentioned Louis C.K, but
Louis and Maria Bamford, and
I love her actually.
Yeah, she's incredible, and trying to think who else is incredible. Jim Gaffigan and the late Mitch Hedberg I love, and Stephen Wright, and just there's so many that I'm probably, it's Doug Stanhope that I'm leaving out, but they're just we're really in a golden age of stand-up comedy, and Seinfeld and the late Gary Shandling, and just it's really too many to mention.
Is it too much to ask, like, what books would you recommend if someone was kind of interested in learning more about just this art?
I'm trying to think.
Because I think the books aren't really, the how-to books aren't really written by the best comedians.
I think, Bill Maher wrote a book years ago called True Story, which was sort of a novel of his experience starting off as a comedian in New York. And
I didn't know that.
And that was really good. I'm surprised they never made it into a movie, because it really captured a lot of what it means to be a stand-up comic, which is which is that I heard a poet, and it might have been the poet laureate under Clinton. It was, I think his last name was Collins, and he said that the hardest thing about being a poet was figuring out what to do with the other 23 and a half hours of the day. And I feel that that's a lot of with comedy. You have a lot of free time, and figuring out what to do with it is a big part of the profession.
You seem to watch a lot of documentaries too. I mean, you refer many times to documentaries in your specials, like the Helvetica one.
Right.
What's your favorite documentaries?
I love.
Or what's your favorite documentaries about comedy?
Oh, I love. There was one called Comedian by Jerry Seinfeld that was really inspiring, and then there's one called One Stand Up Stood Out that was really about the Boston scene in the 80s and maybe part of the 70s. So
who was the stand up who stood out?
There were a number of them, but it was like Steve Sweeney and Don Gavin and Stephen Wright and Dennis Leary and guys of that, Tony V and guys of that level, and that was a really good documentary too.
And then what about a documentary about any topic?
Hoop Dreams. I really love.
Hoop Dreams is the best.
I really think that's one of the best documentaries of all time. I really loved it. Yeah.
I'm gonna watch that again. I think that was on I want to say HBO 1996, something
Probably.
like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
All right. Well, again, Gary, it's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Excited.
I had such a great time. Thanks for having me in.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
And then Jay, can you take a picture from there, while we're sort of talking?
For more from James, check out The James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network at jamesaltucher.com and get yourself on the free Insiders list today.
Hey there, thanks for listening. If you subscribe, you'll never miss a single show. And it's really easy to do this, and it helps me a lot. Just go to iTunes, search for The James Altucher Show, and click subscribe. Thank you.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.